All right. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Good, good. Great to see everyone. Hi, my name is Vance Jackson. I'm the CEO of Next Consulting Group, and I have the honor and privilege of speaking on nonprofit board governance, financial insight, uh, a couple of things about myself. I'm a, University of Michigan grad, undergrad, School of Social Work, MSW 2006. I had the honor of, well, I think we go to the next slide, or should I click on the button here? Excellent. I had the honor of serving within the mayor's office at the city of Detroit, where we raised a little over $1 billion in philanthropic and corporate capital with, thank you, with various foundation leaders, large foundations. I'm not going to mention the foundation's names, but it was an honor to serve with them. We had the privilege of raising philanthropic capital, corporate capital from corporations that wanted to donate to the city of Detroit and deliver different types of services from housing, workforce development, youth development, and other aspects within the city of Detroit. However, we had to come together with many different social impact organizations that had to serve as fiduciaries as well as fiscal overseers of the resources that came within the city of Detroit. So today's session is about nonprofit boards that sit at the intersection of mission, money, and accountability. So to the next slide here. Prior to the mayor's office, I served within J.P. Morgan, middle market commercial banking, where I served inside of the middle market section where we catered to clients that range from $100 million to approximately $2 billion in annual revenue. They saw that work and they asked me to serve on numerous nonprofit boards, national nonprofit boards, and the University of Michigan School of Social Work asked me to serve as a professor at the School of Social Work. So today, I have the honor of serving as a CEO of Next Consulting Group and serve as an advisor to the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, as well as various banks regionally that I can't mention their names now, but I can talk to you one-on-one if you like. And we, shameless plug, have a social impact master's in social work master's program that we're launching in the fall. So if you want to check that out. All right. Let's roll into what is the board's role in financial oversight. Before I get into it, I would love to see, is there anyone serving on a nonprofit board today? Could you raise your hand? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. First-time board members, could you raise your hand? Oh, yes, good, good. All right. Those who have started a nonprofit, could you raise your hand? Excellent, excellent. Those who have served on a foundation board, could you raise your hand? There it is. All right. As you saw, the numbers dwindled down as I asked the questions. Because serving on a nonprofit board as a volunteer is a remarkable opportunity for you to share your insight, your fiscal background, your skills, talents, and abilities. But as you move into various aspects of fiscal oversight, you'll see the numbers dwindle down. The individuals that serve on various capacities, such as a foundation board versus a nonprofit board, is completely separate here. So let's go into the three non-negotiables as a board member. Am I standing in the proper position for the camera? Awesome. Duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. Do these three duties sound familiar? Could you raise your hand if they do? Excellent, excellent. That was a trick question. It was a trick question. It was a trick question. Duty of care, duty of care. I was going to do this in lecture style, but because of the overwhelming hands that were raised when I asked who served on the board, I'm going to ask, who knows what duty of care is? Raise your hand. Or would like to give insight about duty of care? Okay, I'll level set. Duty of care is understanding the organizational's financial position by asking informed questions, taking care. It's the very basic level of serving as a board member. The reason why you'd like to serve as a board member is because you care about the organization, you care about the mission, you care about the individuals and the communities that they serve. Duty of care, understanding the financial position, understanding the organizational's financial health by asking not just the treasurer questions, not the finance committee questions, but individuals that are on the ground, individuals that are doing the work every single day. Duty of care. Duty of loyalty. It puts the organization's interests above your personal or external interests. It's interesting that with the duty of care, duty of loyalty, sometimes you have to sign a conflict of interest form. How many of you have signed a conflict of interest form within your organizations? Excellent, excellent, excellent. Sometimes they do not exist. The policy does not exist. And it's critical to have that form or that policy in place. How many of you have signed a NDA, non-disclosure agreement? Excellent. I see someone's hand that continues to rise up. He has a little more experience than everyone, but it is really cool because when you're starting a startup or you're serving as a board member to an organization that has intellectual property that's competitive in the marketplace, duty of loyalty, putting the organization's or the company's interests ahead of your own is vital to the health of the organization. And then finally, duty of obedience. Ensure that resources are used in alignment with mission and legal requirements. Alignment. Aligning yourself and aligning your skills, aligning your background, your resources, your network with the company's or the organization's mission. If you are a real estate developer, if you are a technology developer, and you have certain technology or you have certain assets that are under your care, and your organization that you're serving on the board of, it's sometimes critical that you take a step back and recuse yourself from various board decisions, from various financial decisions that the organization has to make. Financial oversight, it's not optional, it's governance. It's the health of the organization. When you're serving in this capacity, it is the lifeblood of your organization. Financial oversight is proactive and not reactive. Proactive and not reactive. Let's dive in here. Who could give me an example of what does it mean to be proactive versus reactive when you're serving on a board? Yes, sir.
Anticipate and see the problem before anybody else does.
Absolutely. Anticipate the problem before anyone else does. Anyone else? Yes.
And doing like routine audits and checks to ensure that things are in place rather than waiting until something potentially comes up to then like wanting to do it.
Absolutely. Routine audits, putting them in place before something comes up. What that looks like before you execute upon a formal audit. Red, yellow, green flags, areas coming up with various cash flow limits within your organization. When we reach X amount of operating reserves, we're able to put a yellow flag. Hey, we might want to look into this before we get into danger zones. I love it. Proactive versus reactive. Anyone else? Anyone else? Not approving numbers or policies that you don't understand. If this is your first time serving on a board, could you raise your hand again? This is your first time serving on a board? Oh, yeah, about half. Okay. If there's a policy, if there's information that you don't understand and you don't want to put yourself out there in front of the entire board within the meeting, you can set up meetings one-on-one with the treasurer, with the analyst, before the board places a actual motion to execute upon a particular policy. You can recuse yourself and say, I abstain from that decision, rather than voting no or yes. And then afterwards, you can gain more insight, gain more information. You can ask and say, I abstain because I choose to have more information. You don't have to say no, be against it, or for it. And so instead of pretending that you know the information, you can abstain, not relying on the treasurer or just the finance committee. You can find out financial information from the governance committee, as the young lady has stated, audit. That's governance. Sometimes the finance committee is not the primary source of those types of controls. Governance could be. And not reacting only when there is a crisis, as you stated. Understanding what's coming ahead. Sometimes there's events that are coming within your organization within a particular month or a season, sometimes tax season, sometimes it's the holiday season. You'll need cash flow, you'll need reserves more during those seasons. And it's critical that prior to the organization heading into those seasons, 30, 60, 90 days out, forecasting on what opportunities do we have to ensure that we are handling our finances well. All right. How should a nonprofit diversify its funds? Diversify its funds. How am I on time? Excellent. As I stated before, I had the honor of serving within the city of Detroit, where we served on a 5-member team. And between 2018 through 2023, we raised over $1 billion in philanthropic, so the foundation capital, and corporate capital. And we had the honor of diversifying our revenue streams from revenues or grants that came from foundations, large, local, and national, federal funds, as well as local, on the ground, county, state, and other cities. We wanted to diversify our resources so that when certain funding streams dried up or when certain grants dried up, we were able to pull on other flexible capital. One was corporate capital as well. Certain corporations have philanthropic arms, but others just chose to creatively give us resources. So common risks are loss of a major funder or policy changes. There are political changes locally at the city level, at the state level, and at the federal level that change all the time. And protecting your organization from those political changes, having policies in place to ensure that if you're over leveraged in a federal fund, for example, or a large donor that is looking to give your company or your organization resources, it lasts for a season, but it's critical to ensure that as things are going well, to diversify those resources. And also internally, leadership transitions. As I stated, about half of the room here, this is your first time serving on a nonprofit board. How many of you have served on a nonprofit board for 5 years or more? Any nonprofit board? Excellent, excellent, excellent. So let's go to 3 to 5 years. Raise your hand. Yep. And then your first time, raise your hand again. So as you can see, the transition, if more than half of the cohort is coming in fresh, the institutional knowledge, those who have served already for 3 to 5 years or more, transitions out, and now you have this learning curve where the new leadership may not know what seasonal changes have happened and will happen. So having those policies in place or playbook in place to help navigate the financial vulnerability over concentration of resources is critical. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. I'll speed up here then. So holistic funding portfolio. Typically, in a nonprofit organization, depending upon if you're in a housing sector, workforce development, youth development, sometimes it can be an economic development nonprofit organization. This is typically what your portfolio looks like. You have some type of government funding, whether it's a local, state, or federal funding. You have some type of philanthropic foundation that's giving resources. Sometimes you have corporate partnerships and also corporate philanthropic foundations. So corporations have philanthropic arms. Some give in-kind resources, and some give straight off of their balance sheet. And many nonprofit organizations rely on individual giving heavily. If your organization relies on individual giving in a overly concentrated way, it's critical to diversify the types of individual donors that give to your organization, whether they're high net worth clients, families, or individuals who are on the ground. It can be students that give resources, but ensuring that your individual giving is diversified. And you get into a tricky situation with earned revenue as a nonprofit, because you start to get into whether or not a nonprofit can earn revenue, and there's a way to diversify that and have a social impact arm, where you have a for-profit arm for your earned revenue. And finally, financial institutions and impact capital. I had the honor of serving within J.P. Morgan for a little over a decade, where I served as a personal banker and then moved into a wealth management financial advisor for high net worth clients, and then got promoted into the commercial bank, where I worked with middle market corporations that ranged from $100 million to $2 billion in annual revenue. And I found that with these financial institutions, they're able to not only give resources to your nonprofit, but they can give resources in a non-traditional way. Instead of their philanthropic arm or their foundation giving resources, they can give directly from their balance sheet and their corporate strategy, CSR, their corporate social responsibility arm, or CRA, their Community Reinvestment Act arm, where they give resources to your nonprofit outside of their foundation, or their philanthropic agenda. The board's role is not only to fundraise, but it's to ensure diversification of resources. Yes, you may have income or resources in your organization, but diversification of those resources is critical. A few questions that board level questions that should matter. What percentage of our budget comes from each funding source? You may have income coming in, you may have resources coming in, you may have grants coming in, but one of the critical questions you can ask is the percentage of the budget. So if you have a $2, $3, $4, $5 million budget, what percentage of those resources are coming in from foundations, from corporations, from individuals? And then what types of corporations, right? What types of foundations? What types of families are giving to our organization? Another one is what revenue is renewable versus one time. That comes through that institutional knowledge, right? We had about 10% of the cohort that was basically leaving the nonprofit service as a board member, right? 3 to 5 years, 5+ years. And then we had more than half of the cohort that was coming in as the first time. So the institutional individuals who have learned and seen the renewable grants or the multi-year grants or the donors that give every year, they've seen that come year after year. And maybe you have one time or individuals that give every other year because of their you have a high net worth family that wants to give because of their minimum distribution that they want to give out of their trust. What funding is restricted or unrestricted? Yes, it's critical that you have income or revenue or grants coming in, but sometimes they have earmarks. Sometimes it's restricted, and it's critical to know what restrictions or what's inside of the grant agreement. I'm going to flip it from being a board member to someone who's pursuing funds. Has anyone in here written a grant before? Raise your hand. Oh, good. About a third of the cohort. Okay. When you're writing for or pursuing funds, you'll see that it depends upon the organization that you're going after. They may or may not have restrictions. But once you receive the resources, your grant agreement that you have, you'll see that they will outline exactly how these funds could be used. You do not see that on your balance sheet or your income statement. All you see is the dollar amount or that's coming in. So it's critical, as someone mentioned earlier, that instead of just reaching out to the treasurer or the finance committee, now you step away from governance. Now you move into the grants management team, those who are managing the grant itself or grants themselves, to get into the weeds of why do we have these resources. And it's critical to do some type of shock analysis. What if our top 2 or our top X funders exit? What if there was a political, or what if there was an economic or a pandemic crisis that took out our funding for our top tier resources or our top tier funders? What would our organization look like? How would we survive? And what will be our runway? How long could we survive? If these questions aren't answered clearly, then oversight it's incomplete. It's it's critical that you understand where our funding is coming from, what types of funding is what type of funding is coming in, and if it's restricted or non-restricted as well. Raise your hand if that makes sense. Yes, excellent, excellent. All right, I have 5 more minutes, and I'm going to speed up here. This is a snapshot, and for those who have served on boards for years, you know that there are tons of policies. There are many different ways that not only this screen can be interpreted, but also I'm sure that you have a toolkit of what is critical for your organization. But these are some essential board policies that at a minimum that the board should have. The annual budget approval policy. Once you craft a budget together, you'll see that it's in place for a certain period of time, whether it's calendar year or fiscal year. And the board will have to approve the budget. Second, financial reporting and review policy. How often do we review our budget? How often do we review our financial controls? How often do we look at reserves? Number 3, reserve policy, operating and emergency. Your organization may not have a reserve policy or reserves. They may have just an operating account if you're a smaller nonprofit, up to $1 million. And the funding or the bank account may not be earmarked for reserves, but you can establish a reserve policy or recommend that you establish a reserve policy, whether it's operating and when you start triggering into emergency. Sometimes there are high net worth families, there are organizations that will give resources to the nonprofit and state that those funds only can be used for a certain particular aspect for the organization. Number 4, conflict of interest. It is major. Ensuring that conflict of interest is inside of your organization so that board members aren't utilizing the nonprofit as their personal agency is critical. And whistleblower policy, ensuring that there isn't retaliation on those who are noticing that there are some protocols that are being broken. What policy is in place to ensure that the whistleblower is protected? And number 6, internal controls and signatory authority policy. Internal controls. How much authority would you give a manager or executive director or someone who can give the okay to sign off on a purchase that's made for X amount, 5,000, 10,000, 2,500, whatever benchmark that you set? It's critical that it's inside of the board policy. And my favorite, the investment policy. I have set up numerous endowments and community endowments, and to establish the investment policy, what types of investment could we invest in the underlying assets? How long could we invest with that particular asset? And when should the reserve or operating emergency policy kick in with the investment policy? It gets interesting when you start crafting the investment committee. The policies are meant to protect the mission, the staff, the board, but most importantly, the reputation of the organization. Policies are critical. All right? A couple quick tips. The power of reserves, ensuring that you have 3 to 6 months of operating reserves is a quick baseline. Reserves create decision-making freedom, not complacency. When you don't have reserves personally and in business, you're leading by crisis. You're you are leading in panic mode versus implementation and strategic oversight. Every board member should be okay with activities statement, the income statement, as well as financial position, balance sheet, cash flow trends. If you've never seen these inside of your nonprofit organization, you don't need to be a CPA, but at least learning and being exposed to those particular particular statements there, and ensuring that you have that board staff partnership. As a board member, listening to staff members, talking with them, and not just at the board meeting, but try to get there throughout the day, throughout the month, and throughout the year. Practical takeaways: financial oversight is a shared board responsibility. Diversification is risk management, and it's not just fundraising jargon. And policies create stability, and questions are your most powerful tool. It was truly an honor to speak to you today, and I've created a quick checklist for you. I can have this emailed out to you if you desire, and I'm more than happy to answer